Justice is a problem play in 4 acts written by John Galsworthy. Let's start Act 1. The scene is the managing clerk's room at the offices of James and Walter Howe on a July morning. The room is old fashioned, furnished with well owned mahogany and leather, and lined with tin boxes and estate plans. It has 3 doors. Two of them are close together in the center of a wall. One of these 2 doors leads to the outer office, which is only divided from the managing clerk's room by a partition of wood and clear glass. And when the door into this outer office is opened, there can be seen the wide outer door leading out onto the stone stairway of the building. The other of these 2 center doors leads to the junior clerk's room. The third door is that leading to the partner's room. The managing clerk Coxon is sitting at his table adding up figures in a passbook and murmuring their numbers to himself. He is a man of 60, wearing spectacles rather short, with a bald head and an honest pug dog face. He is dressed in a well-worn black frock coat and pepper and salt trousers. Coxon. And 5s 12 and 3, 15, 19, 23, 32, 41 and carry 4. He takes the page and goes on murmuring. 5, 7, 12, 17, 24 and 9, 33, 13 and carry 1. He again makes a tick. The outer office door is opened and Swiddle, the office boy, appears, closing the door behind him. He is a pale youth of 16 with spiky hair. Coxon, with grumpy expectation, and carry 1. Swiddle, there is a party wants to see Falder, Mr. Coxon. Coxon, 5, 9, 16, 21, 29, and carry 2. Send him to Morris's. What name? Swiddle, Honeywill. Coxon, what's his business? Swiddle, it's a woman. Coxon, a lady? Swiddle, no, a person. Coxon, ask her in. Take this passbook to Mr. James. Swiddle, reopening the door. Will you come in, please? Ruth Honeywill comes in. She is a tall woman, 26 years old, unpretentiously dressed, with black hair and eyes and an ivory white, clear cut face. She stands very still, having a natural dignity of pose and gesture. Swiddle goes out into the partner's room with the passbook. Coxon, looking round at Ruth. The young man is out. Suspiciously. State your business, please. Ruth, who speaks in a matter of fact voice and with a slight West Country accent. It's a personal matter, sir. Coxon, we don't allow private callers here. Will you leave a message? Ruth, I would rather see him, please. She narrows her dark eyes and gives him a honeyed look. Coxon, it's all against the rules. Suppose I had my friends here to see me, it would never do. Ruth, no, sir. Coxon, exactly. And here you are wanting to see a junior clerk? Ruth, yes, sir. I must see him. Coxon, turning full round to her with a sort of outraged interest. But this is a lawyer's office. Go to his private address. Ruth, he is not there. Coxon, are you related to the party? Ruth, no, sir. Coxon, I don't know what to say. It's no affair of the office. Ruth, but what am I to do? Coxon, dear me, I can't tell you that. Swiddle comes back. He crosses to the outer office and passes through into it, with a quizzical look at Coxon, carefully leaving the door an inch or too open. Cookson, this won't do. You know, this won't do at all. Suppose one of the partners came in. An incoherent knocking and chuckling is heard from the outer door of the outer office. Swiddle, putting his head in, uh, there is some children outside here. Ruth, they are mine, please. Swiddle, shall I hold them in check? Ruth, they are quite small, sir. She takes a step towards Coxon. Coxon, you must not take up his time in office hours. We are a clerk sort as it is. Ruth, it's a matter of life and death. Coxon, life and death? Swiddle, here is Falder. Falder has entered through the outer office. He is a pale, good looking young man with quick, rather scared eyes. He moves towards the door of the clerk's office and stands there irresolute. Coxon, well, I will give you a minute. It's not regular. Taking up a bundle of papers, he goes out into the partner's room. Ruth, in a low, hurried voice, he's on the drink again, Will. He tried to cut my throat last night. I came out with the children before he was awake. I went round to you. Folder. I have changed my digs. Ruth. Is it all ready for tonight? Folder. I have got the tickets. Meet me 11:45 at the booking office. For God's sake, don't forget we are man and wife. Looking at her with tragic intensity. Ruth. You are not afraid of going, are you? Folder. Have you got your things and the children's? Ruth. Had to leave them for fear of waking Honeywill. All but one bag. I can't go near home again. Folder. Folder. All that money gone for nothing. How much must you have? Ruth. £6. I could do with that, I think. Folder. Don't give away where we are going. As if to himself. When I get out there, I mean to forget it all. Ruth. If you are sorry, say so. I would sooner he killed me than take you against your will. Folder, with a queer smile. You have got to go. I don't care. I will have you. Ruth, you have just to say, it's not too late. Folder, it is too late. Here is £7. Booking office 11:45 tonight. If you were not what you are to me, Ruth. Ruth, kiss me. They cling together passionately, then fly apart just as Coxon re-enters the room. Ruth turns and goes out through the outer office. Coxon advances deliberately to his chair and seats himself. Coxon, this isn't right, Folder. Folder, it cannot occur again, sir. Coxon, it's an improper use of these premises. Folder, yes, sir. Coxon, you quite understand. The party was in some distress, and having children with her, I allowed my feelings. He opens a drawer and produces from it a tract. Just take this. Purity in the home. It's a well written thing. Folder, taking it with a peculiar expression. Thank you, sir. Coxon. And look here, Falder, before Mr. Walter comes, have you finished up that cataloguing Davis had in hand before he left? Falder. I shall have done with it tomorrow, sir, for good. Coxon. It's over a week since Davis went. Now it won't do, Falder. You were neglecting your work for private life. I shall not mention about the party having called, but... Falder. Thank you, sir. Coxon stares at the door through which Falder has gone out, then shakes his head and is just settling down to write when Walter Howe comes in through the outer office. He is a rather refined looking man of 35 with a pleasant, almost apologetic voice. Walter, good morning, Coxon. Coxon, morning, Mr. Walter. Walter, my father here? Coxon, always with a certain patronage as to a young man who might be doing better. Mr. James has been here since 11 o'clock. Walter, I have been in to see the pictures at the Guildhall. Coxon, looking at him as though this were exactly what was to be expected. Have you now? Yes? This lease of bolters, am I to send it to council? Walter, what does my father say? Coxon, haven't bothered him. Walter, well, we cannot be too careful. Coxon, it's such a little thing, hardly worth the fees. I thought you would do it yourself. Walter, send it, please. I don't want the responsibility. Coxon, with an indescribable air of compassion, just as you like. This right of way case, you have got them on the deeds. Walter, I know, but the intention was obviously to exclude that bit of common ground. Coxon, we need not worry about that. We're the right side of the law. Walter, I don't like it. Coxon, with an indulgent smile. We shall not want to set ourselves up against the law. Your father wouldn't waste his time doing that. As he speaks, James Shaw comes in from the partner's room. He is a shortish man with white side whiskers, plentiful grey hair, shrewd eyes, and gold pince nez. James, morning, sir. Walter, how are you, father? Coxon, looking down his nose at the papers in his hand as though deprecating their size. I will just take Walter's lease into young Falder to draft the instructions. He goes out into Falder's room. Walter, about that right of way case? James, oh well, we must go forward there. I thought you told me yesterday the farm's balance was over 400. Walter, so it is. James, holding out the passbook to his son. 351, no recent checks. Just get me out the checkbook. Walter goes to a cupboard, unlocks a drawer, and produces a checkbook. James, tick the pounds in the counterfoils. 5, 54, 7, 5, 28, 20, 90, 11, 52, 71. Tally. Walter, nodding. Can't understand. Made sure it was over 400. James, give me the checkbook. He takes the checkbook and counts the counterfoils. What's this 90? Walter, who drew it? James, you. Walter, taking the checkbook. July 7th? That's the day I went down to look over the Trenton estate. Last Friday week. I came back on the Tuesday. You remember? But look here, father. It was 9 I drew a check for. 5 guineas 5 guineas to Smithers and my expenses. It just covered all but half a crown. James, let's look at that 90 check. He sorts the check out from the bundle in the pocket of the passbook. Seems all right. There is no 9 here. This is bad. Who cashed that £9 check? Walter, puzzled and pained. Let's see. I was finishing Mrs. Reddy's will only just at time. Yes, I gave it to Coxon. James, look at that TY. That yours? Walter, after consideration. My voice curled back a little. This doesn't. James. As Coxon re-enters the as Coxon re-enters from Falder's room, we must ask him. Just come here and carry your mind back a bit, Coxon. Do you remember cashing a check for Mr. Walter last Friday week, the day he went to Trenton? Coxon, yes, £9. James, look at this. Handing him the check. Coxon, no, £9. My lunch was just coming in, and of course I like it hot. I gave the check to Davis to run round to the bank. He brought it back, all notes. You remember, Mr. Walter, you wanted some silver to pay your cab, with a certain contemptuous compassion. Here, let me see. You have got the wrong check. He takes checkbook and passbook from Walter. Walter, afraid not. Coxon, having seen for himself, it's funny. James, you gave it to Davis, and Davis sailed for Australia on Monday. Looks black, Coxon. Coxon, puzzled and upset. Why this would be a felony? No, no, there is some mistake. James, I hope so. Coxon, there has never been anything of that sort in the office the 29 years I have been here. James, looking at check and counterfoil. This is a very clever bit of work, a warning to you not to leave space after your figures, Walter. Walter. Yes, I know. I was in such a tearing hurry that afternoon. Coxon. That has upset me. James. The counterfoil altered to very deliberate piece of swindling. What was Davis's ship? Walter. City of Rangoon. James. We ought to wear and have him arrested at Naples. He cannot be there yet. Coxon. His poor young wife. I liked the young man. Dear, oh dear, in this office. Walter. Shall I go to the bank and ask the cashier? James. Bring him round here. And ring up Scotland Yard. Walter. Really? He goes out through the outer office. James passes the room. He stops and looks at Coxon, who is disconsolately rubbing the knees of his trousers. James, well, Coxon, there is something in character, isn't there? Coxon, looking at him over his spectacles. I don't quite take you, sir. James, your story would sounded thin to anyone who didn't know you. Coxon, yes. He laughs, then with sudden gravity. I'm sorry for that young man. I feel it as if it was my own son. Mr. James. James. A nasty business. Coxon. It unsettles you. All goes on regular and then a thing like this happens. Shall not relish my lunch today. James. As bad as that. Coxon. Coxon. It makes you think confidently. He must have had temptation. James. Not so fast. We haven't convicted him yet. Coxon. I would sooner have lost a month's salary than had this happen. James. I hope that fellow will hurry up. Coxon. Keeping things pleasant for the cashier. It isn't 50 years, Mr. James. He won't be a minute. James, the idea of dishonesty about this office, it hits me hard, Coxon. He goes towards the door of the partner's room. Sweedle, entering quietly to Coxon in a low voice. She is popped up again, sir. Something she forgot to say to Falder. Coxon, roused from his abstraction. Yeah, impossible. Send her away. What's that? Coxon, nothing, Mr. James. A private matter. Here I will calm myself. He goes into the outer office as James passes into the partner's room. Now you really must not. We cannot have anybody just now. Ruth, not for a minute, sir. Coxon, really? Really? I can't have it. If you want him wait about, he will be going out for his lunch directly. Ruth, yes, sir. Walter, entering with the cashier, passes Ruth as she leaves the outer office. Coxon, to the cashier who resembles a sedentary dragoon. Good morning. To Walter, your father is in there. Walter crosses and goes into the partner's room. Coxon, it's a nasty, unpleasant little matter, Mr. Cowley. I'm quite ashamed to have to trouble you. Cowley, I remember the cheque quite well, as if it were a lever. Seemed in perfect order. Coxon, sit down, won't you? I'm not a sensitive man, but a thing like this is about the place. It's not nice. I like people to be open and jolly together. Cowlick, quite so. Coxon, buttonholing him and glancing towards the partner's room. Of course, he is a young man. I have told him about it before now, leaving space after his figures, but he will do it. Cowley, I should remember the person's face. Quite a youth. Coxon, I don't think we shall be able to show him to you, as a matter of fact. James and Walter have come back from the partner's room. James, good morning, Mr. Cowley. You you have seen my son and myself. You have seen Mr. Coxon, and you have seen Sudel, my office boy. It was none of us, I take it. The cashier shakes his head with a smile. James, be so good as to sit here. Coxon, engage Mr. Cowley in conversation, will you? He goes towards Falder's room. Coxon, just a word, Mr. James. Well, Coxon, you don't want to upset the young man in there, do you? He is a nervous young fellow. James, this must be thoroughly cleared up, Coxon, for the sake of Falder's name, to say nothing of yours. Coxon, with some dignity. That will look after itself, sir. He has been upset once this morning. I don't want him startled again. James, it's a matter of form, but I can't stand upon niceness over a thing like this. Too serious. Just talk to Mr. Cowley. He opens the door of Falder's room. James, bring in the papers in Bolter's lease. Will you, Falder? Coxon, bursting into voice. Do you keep dogs? The cashier, with his eyes fixed on the door, doesn't answer. Coxon, you haven't such a thing as a bulldog pup. You could spare me, I suppose. At the look on the cashier's face, his jaw drops, and he turns to see Falter standing in the doorway with his eyes fixed on Cowley, like the eyes of a rabbit fastened on a snake. Falter, advancing with the papers. Here they are, sir. James, taking them. Thank you. Falter, do you want me, sir? James, no thanks. Falter turns and goes back into his own room. As he shuts the door, James gives the cashier an interrogative look, and the cashier nods. James, sure? This isn't as we suspected. Cowley, quite. He knew me. I suppose he can't sleep out of that room. Coxon, gloomily. There is only the window, a whole floor, and a basement. The door of Falder's room is quietly opened, and Falder, with his hat in his hand, moves towards the door of the outer office. James, quietly. Where are you going, Falder? Falder, to have my lunch, sir. James, wait a few minutes. Would you? I want to speak to you about this lease. Falder, yes, sir. He goes back into his room. Cowley, if I'm wanted, I can swear that's the young man who cashed the check. It was the last check I handled that morning before my lunch. These are the numbers of the notes he had. He puts a slip of paper on the table, then brushing his hat round. Good morning. James, good morning, Mr. Cowley. Cowley to Coxon, good morning. Coxon, good morning. The cashier goes out through the outer office. Coxon sits down in his chair as though it were the only place left in the morass of his feelings. Walter, what are you going to do? James, have him in. Give me the check and the counterfoil. Coxon, I don't understand. I thought young Davis. James, we shall see. Walter, one moment, father. Have you thought it out? James, call him in. Coxon, rising with difficulty and opening Falder's door. Hoarsely, step in here a minute. Falder, impassively, yes, sir. James, turning to him suddenly with the check held out. You know this check, Falder? Falder, no, sir. James, look at it. You cashed it last Friday week. Falder, oh, yes, sir, that one. Davis gave it me. James, I know. And you gave Davis the cash. Falder, yes, sir. James, when Davis gave you the check, was it exactly like this? Falder, yes, I think so, sir. James, you know that Mr. Walter drew that check for £9. Falder, no, sir, 90. James, 9, Falder. Falder, faintly, I don't understand, sir. James, the suggestion, of course, is that the check was altered. Whether by you or Davis is the question. Falder, I. Coxon, take your time, take your time. Falder, regaining his impassivity. Not by me, sir. James, the check was handed to Coxon by Mr. Walter at 1 o'clock. We know that because Mr. Coxon's lunch had just arrived. Coxon, I couldn't leave it. James, exactly. He therefore gave the check to Davis. It was cashed by you at 1:15. We know that because the cashier recollects it for the last check he handled before his lunch. Falder, yes, sir. Davis gave it to me because some friends were giving him a farewell lunch. James, you accuse Davis then? Falder, I don't know, sir. It's very funny. Walter, who has come close to his father, says something to him in a low voice. James, Davis was not here again after that Saturday, was he? Coxon, anxious to be of assistance to the young man and seeing faint signs of their all being jolly once more. No, he sailed on the Monday. James, was he, Falder? Falder, no, sir. James, very well then. How do you account for the fact that this note was added to the 9 in the counterfoil on or after Tuesday? Coxon, how is that? Falder gives a sort of lark. He tries to pull himself together, but he has gone all to pieces. James, very grimly. Out, I am afraid, Coxon. The checkbook remained in Mr. Walter's pocket till he came back from Trenton on Tuesday morning. In the fact of this, Falder, do you still deny that you altered both check and counterfoil? Falder, no, sir, no, Mr. Howe. I did it, sir, I did it. Coxon, succumbing to his feelings. Dear, dear, what a thing to do. Falter, I wanted the money so badly, sir. I didn't know what I was doing. Coxon, however, such a thing could have come into your head. Falter, grasping in the words, I can't think, sir, really. It was just a minute of madness. James, a long minute. Falter, tapping the counterfoil. 4 days at least. Folder. Sir, I swear I didn't know what I would done till afterwards, and then I hadn't the pluck. Oh, sir, look over it. I will pay the money back. I will, I promise. James, go into your room. Folder, with a swift, imploring look, goes back into his room. There is silence. James, about as bad a case as there could be. Coxon, to break the law like that in here. Walter, what's to be done? James, nothing for it. Prosecute. Walter, it's his first offense. James, shaking his head. I have grave doubts of that. Too neat a piece of swindling altogether. Coxon, I shouldn't be surprised if he was tempted. James, life is one long temptation, Coxon. Coxon, yes, but I am speaking of the flesh and the devil. Mr. James, there was a woman come to see him this morning. Walter, the woman we passed as we came in just now. Is it his wife? Coxon, no, no relation. Restraining what in jollier circumstances would have been a wing. A married person, though. Walter, how do you know? Coxon, brought her children. There they were outside the office. James, a real bad egg. Walter, I should like to give him a chance. James, I can forgive him for the sneaky way he went to work, counting on our suspecting young Davies if the matter came to light. It was the merest accident the checkbook stayed in your pocket. Walter, it must have been the temptation of a moment. He hadn't time. James, a man doesn't succumb like that in a moment. If he is if he has a clean mind and habits, he is rotten. Got the eyes of a man who can't keep his hands off when there is money about. Walter, we hadn't noticed that before. James, brushing the remark aside. I have seen lots of those fellows in my time. No doing anything with them except to keep them out of harm's way. They have got a blind spot. Walter, it's penal servitude. Coxon, they're nasty places, prisons. James, I don't see how it's possible to spare him. Out of the question to keep him in this office. Honesty is the sine qua non. Coxon, of course it is. James, equally out of the question to send him out amongst people who have no knowledge of his character. One must think of society. Walter, but to brand him like this. James, if it had been a straightforward case, I would give him another chance. It's far from that. He has dissolute habits. Coxon, I didn't say that. Extenuating circumstances. James, same thing. He has gone to work in the most cold-blooded way to defraud his employers and cast the blame on an innocent man. If that's not a case for the law to take its course, I don't know what is. Walter, for the sake of his future, though. James, sarcastically, according to you, no one would ever prosecute. Walter, I hate the idea of it. Coxon, we must have protection. James, this is degenerating into talk. He moves towards the partner's room. Walter, put yourself in his place, father. James, you ask too much of me. Walter, we can't possibly tell the pressure there was on him. James, you may depend on it, my boy. If a man is going to do this sort of thing, he will do it, pressure or no pressure. If he isn't, nothing will make him. Walter, he will never do it again. Coxon, suppose I were to have a talk with him. We don't want to be hard on the young man. James, that will do, Coxon. I have made up my mind. He passes into the partner's room. Coxon, after a doubtful moment, we must excuse your father. I don't want to go against your father. If he thinks it right. Walter, confound it, Coxon. Why don't you back me up? You know you feel. Coxon, on his dignity. I really can't say what I feel. Walter, we shall regret it. Coxon, he must have known what he was doing. Walter, the quality of mercy is not strained. Coxon, come, come, Mr. Walter. We must try and see it sensible. Sweedle, your lunch, sir. Coxon, put it down. While Sweedle is putting it down on Coxon's table, the detective Wister enters the outer office and, finding no one there, comes to the inner doorway. He is a square, medium sized man, clean shaved, in a serviceable blue serge suit and strong boots. Wister to Walter. From Scotland Yard, sir. Detective Sergeant Wister. Walter. Very well. I will speak to my father. He goes into the partner's room. James enters. Morning. In answer to an appealing gesture from Coxon. I'm sorry. I would stop short of this if I felt I could. Open that door. Sweedle, wondering and scared, opens it. Come here, Mr. Falder. As Falder comes shrinkingly out, the detective, in obedience to a sign from James, slips his hand out and grabs his arm. Falder, oh no, oh no. Wister, come, come. There is a good lad. James, I charge him with felony. Falder, oh sir, there is someone. I did it for her. Let me be till tomorrow. James motions with his head. At that sign of hardness, Falder becomes rigid. Then turning, he goes out quietly in the detective's grip. James follows, stiff and erect. Sweedle, rushing to the door with open mouth, pursues them through the outer office into the corridor. When they have all disappeared, Coxon spins completely round and makes a rush for the outer office. Coxon, here, here. What are we doing? There is silence. He takes out his handkerchief and mops the sweat from his face. Going back blindly to his table, he sits down and stares blankly at his lunch. The curtain falls.